This drama begins by showing a young man named Bong Seok. He found himself floating in space one night, and that freaked him out. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name, and he started falling rapidly. Fortunately, it was all just a dream. The next day was Bong Seok's first day back at school after a long break. He woke up all excited, and his mom, Mian, had made his favorite breakfast. She even packed his bag with some weight plates and told him to wear ankle weights. She warned him not to doze off in class before he headed out. On the other hand, a high school girl named Hee-soo was getting ready for school. Her dad, Joo-won, told her he was planning to open a fried chicken restaurant. Hee-soo suggested going for a franchise, thinking it might make more money, but her dad had his own secret recipe in mind. In a rush to get to school on time, Hee-soo said her goodbyes and took off. Meanwhile, Bong Seok, while chilling on a bus, he's pretty impressed when he spots Hee-soo sprinting ahead of the bus, not looking the least bit tired. So he decides to hop off the bus to catch up with her, and they both manage to catch the bus at a stop. Hee-soo gets on the bus, but her transportation card is running low on cash. The bus driver, Gae-do, tells her to hop off and recharge her card. Just then, Bong Seok steps in and tells Gae-do that he'll cover Hee-soo's ride with his own card. Hee-soo thanks Bong Seok and promises to pay him back later. Gae-do then praises Bong Seok as a true gentleman. Hee-soo offers to carry Bong Seok's lunch bag, but surprisingly, it was pretty heavy. She struggles a bit, but eventually manages. Bong Seok lets her carry it to make things easier. As they get closer, Bong Seok becomes enchanted when he sees Hee-soo because she's very beautiful. However, his admiration for Hee-soo causes Bong Seok to lose control, and he realizes that his body is starting to float. Bong Seok was trying his best to calm down, taking slow breaths. But just then, the bus were on a high-speed bump, and he lost his balance, crashing into the window in front of him. He'd already been late for school because he had to switch buses twice just to catch up with Hee-soo. And he ended up arriving late and got stuck cleaning all the school toilets as a punishment. Inside his classroom, class 3-3, one of his classmates, Hun Beol, was busy recording what everyone was up to. Meanwhile, the class president, Kung Hoon, told everyone to hand in their phones because it was time to start the lesson. On the other hand, Hee-soo, who was a new student, was trying to work something out with the PE teacher, Il-run. She didn't want to buy a new uniform to save her dad some money, and she also wanted to stay close to him instead of going far away for college. When Il-run heard this, he suggested that Hee-soo consider studying sports in universities because her physical fitness test results were outstanding. Hee-soo was worried she'd have to take extra classes to pursue a sports major, but Il-run reassured her. He said all she needed to do was work on her overall physical fitness. If she could get the top score in the practical exam, she'd get a scholarship to a Seoul university, and she wouldn't even have to pay the application fee. Il-run promised to let her use the school's sports equipment anytime she wanted to train. Later, Hee-soo ended up in class 3-3, and this got Bong Seok feeling all mixed up. He tried really hard to keep himself from floating away. The scene then shifts to a man named Frank, who just landed in South Korea. After leaving the airport, he went to the parking area and opened a package with courier delivery uniforms and some secret documents. Frank checked out one of the documents, and it had info from the Supernatural Control Agency, including a picture of a guy called Jin Chan. After a quick read, Frank hopped into a cargo truck and headed to his first destination. After school, Kung Hoon invited Hee-soo to the school gym and gave her the key. He told her that Il-run had given her permission to use the facilities anytime she wanted. Hee-soo thanked Kung Hoon and said she'd go for a run before heading home. Kung Hoon asked Il-run about Hee-soo's strength, but Il-run refused to explain anything to Kung Hoon and instead told him to leave. Meanwhile, Frank finally made it to Jin Chan's office. Jin Chan realized Frank wasn't an average courier because he knew his code name. Jin Chan told his employees to clear out and asked Frank why he was there, but Frank had come to take him out and they got into a fight. Surprisingly, Jin Chan managed to lift Frank with one hand and slamming him down over and over. But then Frank broke Jin Chan's glasses to distract him and then stabbed him in the heart with a pen. Then, Frank asked Jin Chan if he had any kids, but Jin Chan said he didn't. Even though his heart had been stabbed, Jin Chan had super strength and tried to attack Frank, but Frank tossed Jin Chan out of the building, which instantly killed Jin Chan as he was thrown from a height. People gathered around Jin Chan's body and called for an ambulance, but Frank quietly slipped away and messaged someone to let them know he'd taken care of Jin Chan. On the way home from school, Bong Seok offered to carry Hee-soo's bag to help her stay grounded, but he told her he wanted to lose weight. Hee-soo let him carry her bag to the bus stop, and they split up there because she had other plans before going home. She actually went to a tutoring center to ask about the cost of university entrance exam preparation. But it was pretty pricey, so she didn't want to ask her dad for the cash. She just told him she needed money for a new sports uniform. Meanwhile, Bong Seok's mom, Mi-yeon, noticed something was up because her son seemed really happy when he got back from school. During dinner, Bong Seok asked her to add more weight plates to his bag, which left Mi-yeon wondering because he usually complained about heavy stuff. On the other hand, Kung-hoon remembered when Il-run told him that Hee-soo had the same powers as him. He got curious about what abilities Hee-soo had and wondered if they could become friends. When he got home, his dad, Jae-mund, was waiting for him outside, and they went in together. At the same time, a woman named Eun-ju told her boss, Young-jun, that Jin Chan had died. Even though they had tried to make it look like an accident, the news of Jin Chan's death had spread on social media. Young-jun got really mad and told Eun-ju to shut down the media and speed up their plan. Meanwhile, Mi-yeon was scrolling through a social media post about Jin Chan's death and spotted a picture of Frank leaving the crime scene. That's when she realized that Jin Chan didn't die by accident like the news said. He was murdered. So she quietly took out her weapon and got ready for a possible attack that might happen soon. The scene then shifts to the past in December 2003. Mi-yeon was on the hunt for a place to live with her son, Bong Seok. Because Bong Seok had this power where he could float in the air, and he couldn't really control it yet. So Mi-yeon decided to rent this big old warehouse to teach Bong Seok how to handle his abilities. One day, Mi-yeon took Bong Seok to the market to buy some fresh meat. She felt like the butcher was giving her a hard time because her son was too big to be carried around. But it turned out the butcher had a disabled son too, so she understood the challenges Mi-yeon was dealing with. Mi-yeon apologized for her assumptions, but the butcher was cool about it. He told her that her son needed his space to grow and play, just like she needed time for herself. In the following days, Mi-yeon started teaching Bong Seok how to walk. Every time he tried, he'd end up floating. She figured out that his powers were linked to his emotions, so she worked hard to help him control his feelings, especially the happiness that could make him float in an instant. A few years later, Mi-yeon moved Bong Seok to a new place because she wanted to open a donkasu restaurant to make money. Bong Seok was still struggling to control his powers, so he spent most of his time at home, watching his favorite superhero TV show. He was a big fan and dreamed of becoming a superhero who could fly into space. So, one day at the school park, he decided to show off a bit. He took off his ankle weights and tried to fly in front of his friends. Bong Seok actually managed to impress them with his superpowers. But one kid, Ta-yeon, got jealous and tried to fly too by jumping from a high place. That ended with Ta-yeon getting badly hurt, and Mi-yeon got called to school because Bong Seok indirectly caused the accident. After that, Mi-yeon warned Bong Seok and told him he couldn't use his powers anymore. She also told him that real power in the world is understanding others' feelings, and that's the most important strength. But unbeknownst to her, a guy named Layog had seen Bong Seok flying and had some plans for him. That night, Bong Seok, feeling guilty for what happened to Ta-yeon, was up on the rooftop in tears. It was pouring rain and super windy, making it even harder for him to control his powers. Luckily, Mi-yeon managed to reach him, pulled him down, and hugged him tight. She said sorry to Bong Seok and promised to always protect him from then on. Fast forward to the present, Bong Seok suddenly woke up when he hit his head hard on the ceiling. Mi-yeon heard the noise and called him down because she had breakfast ready for him. Mi-yeon then noticed Bong Seok had a bloody nose and asked what happened. Bong Seo explained that he accidentally smacked his nose on the ceiling. As they were getting ready to head to school, Bong Seo waited for Hee-soo at the bus stop, but she didn't show up. Finally, the bus arrived, and the driver, Gae-dao, told Bong Seo to hop on because he'd be late for school if he kept waiting for Hee-soo. Surprisingly, Hee-soo had run to school, even though it was pouring rain that day. Meanwhile, Frank was getting ready for his mission to eliminate a guy with the codename Bong Pyong. But as he was making a U-turn, he nearly crashed into a bus driven by Gae-dao. Thankfully, Gae-dao hit the brakes just in time, preventing a major accident. Instead of saying sorry for breaking traffic rules and almost causing a disaster, Frank just took off, leaving Gae-dao frustrated. When Bong Seo, Hee-soo, and some other students rushed to the school gate, they saw Il-run waiting there, ready to punish anyone who showed up late. Bong Seo and Hee-soo accidentally collided as they tried to pass through at the same time. Surprisingly, Bong Seo ended up falling, even though he was lugging around those heavy weight plates in his bag. Il-run shut the gate and punished both of them for being late. Hee-soo tried to explain that she had run from home to school, hoping for some leniency, but Il-run just told her to run faster next time. Meanwhile, Frank finally reached Bong Pyong's place, which was a used bookstore. Bong Pyong, learning that Frank was there to kill him, asked why they were targeting retired agents who were experimenting with electrical currents to boost their powers. Frank, who knew about Bong Pyong's powers, quickly disabled the electrical circuit at the location. But Bong Pyong did not lose his wits and used batteries to boost his electrical abilities, causing disruptions in the radio waves that Gae-dao noticed. With his newfound powers, Bong Pyong managed to knock Frank down several times. Eventually, Frank let Bong Pyong strangle him before making a comeback. Realizing that Bong Pyong had run out of energy, Frank swiftly snapped his neck, taking him out. While going through some photos, Frank discovered that Bong Pyong had a son, even though Bong Pyong had intentionally damaged his son's face in the picture to protect him from Frank's vengeance. Before leaving, Frank set the place on fire to erase all evidence, but he was frustrated because he couldn't see Bong Pyong's son's face. Back at school, Hee-soo was busy filling out her application form for the sports department. One of her classmates, Ki-soo, got curious and tried to grab the form. Kung-hoon, sitting in front of Hee-soo, scolded Ki-soo for his nosiness. During the break, Hee-soo asked Bong Seo to lend her his uniform because her own was sweaty and making everyone uncomfortable. Bong Seo quickly got his uniform from his locker, and Hee-soo rushed to the auditorium bathroom to shower and change. Unbeknownst to her, Ki-soo and Kung-hoon were secretly following her. Kung-hoon had intended to protect Hee-soo from any potential bullying by Ki-soo. However, Ki-soo became angry when Kung-hoon teased him, so he challenged Kung-hoon to a fight in the school's backyard, where there were no security cameras. Surprisingly, Kung-hoon turned out to be quite skilled in fighting, holding his own against Hee-soo's attacks. Not only that, Kung-hoon had impressive physical strength. He effortlessly snapped a tree with one hand and knocked Hee-soo out. After school, Hee-soo asked Bong Seo to come with her to buy a new uniform. Since she needed 4 sets, Hee-soo tried to haggle for a discount, but the seller wouldn't budge. She then asked if the seller could stitch her initials on the uniforms, but they wanted 5,000 won for each initial. Hee-soo, on a tight budget, decided to skip the initials to save money. Bong Seo suggested she ask her mom, but Hee-soo sadly revealed that her mom had passed away when she was young. After getting the uniforms, Hee-soo invited Bong Seo to grab a meal at a nearby supermarket. Meanwhile, Eun-ju updated her boss about Bong Pyong's death, but they still didn't know who did it. On the other hand, Ju-won also heard about Bong Pyong's death on TV. Mi-yeon, while examining photos near the site of the fire, spotted the same truck used for transporting goods that she had seen around the area where Jin Chan's body was found. Despite Bong Pyong having messed up his son's face in the photo, Frank managed to dig up clues about the boy. It seemed the kid had gone to Chongwon High School, the same school as Bong Sok and the others. While they were eating, Bong Seo shared with Hee-soo that his mom runs the Donkus Su restaurant all by herself, and he never really knew anything about his dad. Just then, they noticed Hee-soo stumbling in, looking battered. Bong-seok got up, wanting to help Hee-soo, but Hee-soo told him to let it be. Bong-seok found it odd because Hee-soo wasn't the kind to get beat up easily, considering he used to be a bully. Bong-seok explained to Hee-soo that Hee-soo had plans to apply for the sports department and even had support from Il-run. However, one day Hee-soo got seriously hurt, which led him to give up on his dreams and turn into a troublemaker, picking on weaker students. Meanwhile, at Mi-yeon's place, some drunken customers tried to intimidate her because she didn't serve alcohol. But the butcher's son, who was quite imposing, suddenly showed up to deliver some meat. The customers got confused, thinking he worked for Mi-yeon, and they got scared and backed off. When Hee-soo got back to school, she told Kung-hoon that she saw Hee-soo sneaking out of the back gate, even though Kung-hoon had earlier told Il-run that Hee-soo had left school early due to illness. Surprisingly, Kung-hoon inquired about Hee-soo and Bong-seok, who appeared to be close. Hee-soo explained that they had some things in common, like both of their parents running restaurants, and they both struggled to make friends, so they naturally became close. As Kung-hoon was about to head home, he suddenly noticed that his uniform had bloodstains from Hee-soo's beating in the school's backyard. Meanwhile, Bong-seok was busy cleaning the men's restroom when Hee-soo unexpectedly showed up to tend to a cut on his elbow. Bong-seok got flustered because he didn't have his backpack with him, so he tried to stay grounded by counting random numbers to prevent himself from floating away. He managed to keep himself down while Hee-soo tended to his wound, but shortly after she left, Bong-seok began struggling to control his powers, and his body started to float again. When she got home, Hee-soo decided to talk to her dad about applying for the sports department, which was a sudden change of plans as she had initially considered the liberal arts department. She explained that she didn't need to go to cram school for the sports department because her homeroom teacher had agreed to teach her everything she needed at school. At the same time, a customer showed up wanting to order 2 portions of fried chicken. Hee-soo asked her father to focus on running the fried chicken restaurant while she would work hard to try to secure a sports department scholarship. The next day, Bong-seok was ready to board the bus to school, but the bus driver was a middle-aged woman instead of Gato. Bong-seok then greeted the driver politely and got on the bus as usual. When he reached school, Bong-seok was about to tell his teacher something, but Il-run asked about Hee-soo, who was absent. However, Hee-soo quickly told him to be quiet, telling him not to say anything to their teacher. In the evening, Hee-soo still had a lot of energy and was running around the field, while Bong-seok took the initiative to turn on all the lights in the school building to help light up Hee-soo's path and keep her from stepping in puddles. On the other hand, Frank finally made it to the entrance of Chongwon High School and seemed to be surveying the area. A school security guard approached him and asked if he was there to deliver a package, but Frank didn't respond and left without a word. The security guard found his behavior suspicious and decided to report it to someone. The next day, Hee-soo underwent physical training with the guidance of Il-run and showed significant improvement. After school, Il-run asked Kung-hoon to turn on the gym's ventilator to clear the dust and make Hee-soo more comfortable during her exercise. Kung-hoon quickly followed his teacher's orders, but unexpectedly, Hee-soo walked into the school gym to continue her physical training without realizing that Kung-hoon was watching her from the control room. To meet her goals, Hee-soo decided to attempt a high jump, which resulted in her spraining her ankle. At the same time, Bong-seok, who had just arrived, rushed to her side, dropping his backpack. Fortunately, Hee-soo's injury wasn't severe, and she didn't notice that Bong-seok had floated to reach her. However, Kung-hoon, who was in the control room, witnessed the entire incident. Hee-soo then asked Bong-seok to help her by holding her ankle while she did sit-ups. However, Bong-seok started having trouble controlling his powers, and he ended up floating right above Hee-soo. When Hee-soo saw this, she quickly approached Bong-seok, who landed a few meters away from her, and asked him what had just happened. Bong-seok, though, didn't want to explain and claimed he had to leave immediately to clean the school hallway. After making sure the gym was empty, Kung-hoon emerged from the control room and used his powers to perform a high jump that surpassed what Hee-soo had achieved. The next day, as Hee-soo was getting ready for school, she found that her father had bought her a new pair of volleyball shoes. At school, while she was practicing, she noticed something unusual about Bong Seok and decided to investigate. Hee-soo pretended to ask Bong Seok to fetch her volleyball shoes from her locker and secretly observed his shoe tracks, which gradually disappeared. When she reached the upper floor, Bong Seok's tracks had vanished completely, so Hee-soo called out for him. Surprisingly, Bong Seok appeared carrying his shoes because he didn't want to dirty the freshly cleaned floor. Shortly after, while they sat on the stairs, Hee-soo brought up her suspicion that Bong Seok could fly, referring to what had happened in the school gym the previous night. Bong Seok got nervous and tried to change the topic, not wanting Hee-soo to discover the truth. But unexpectedly, when Hee-soo attempted to fix a bandage on his arm, Bong Seok couldn't control his power, revealing to Hee-soo that he could indeed fly. He asked Hee-soo to fetch his backpack, but he continued to float, so Hee-soo courageously jumped from the upper floor to reach him. She managed to catch Bong Seok, put on his backpack, and held him tightly to prevent him from floating too high. Their struggle to control Bong Seok's power was caught on the nearby CCTV camera. Finally, Bong Seok managed to regain control of his power, but he still had trouble walking, so Hee-soo helped him get home. When they arrived at Bong Seok's home, Mi-an was surprised to see her son with a girl, as he had never brought anyone home before. Hee-soo introduced herself as Bong Seok's classmate, and Mi-an complimented her as a beautiful girl. Mi-an, thrilled that Bong Seok finally had a friend, invited Hee-soo to join them for dinner. Bong Seok apologized to Hee-soo for his mother assuming they were a couple, but Hee-soo didn't mind. Mi-an not only served a delicious meal, but also offered snacks to Hee-soo, happy that her son had made a friend, especially a beautiful one. Hee-soo then asked Bong Seok if she could use the bathroom to change her clothes. Mi-an suggested that Bong Seok take Hee-soo upstairs for a more comfortable chat, since many customers were coming to their restaurant at that time. Meanwhile, Ju-won got a call from Hee-soo, who said she would be late as she was visiting a friend. Simultaneously, he received an order for a large portion of fried chicken from a customer who wanted it delivered to a nearby shopping center. On the other hand, Frank went to a hair salon in that same shopping center, targeting the owner, Na-ju. At first, he posed as a regular customer, but Na-ju quickly realized his true intentions and attacked him with scissors, stabbing them into his head. Surprisingly, Frank had the power to regenerate, and Na-ju, armed with another weapon that allowed her to see behind walls, shot at Frank in the adjacent room. Despite being repeatedly injured, Frank regenerated quickly and fought back, gradually gaining the upper hand. However, Na-ju refused to give in and warned Frank that Gore Yangpo would come for him. Before ending her life, Frank told Na-ju that her children would attend her funeral, and that he would uncover the secrets agents like her were hiding about their children. Back at Bong Seok's place, Hee-soo apologized for prying into his secret and accidentally discovered that he had the power to float, which he struggled to control. Bong Seok shared that he used weighted belts on his legs to stay grounded and showed Hee-soo his bedroom, which had a ceiling covered with styrofoam to prevent injuries from floating. He also explained that he recited the digits of number to calm himself down and that his power was influenced by his emotions. Hearing this, Hee-soo realized that Bong Seok had been trying to control his power and that her presence seemed to excite him. She asked if he liked her, and Bong Seok intentionally floated and hit the ceiling, creating a loud noise. Mi-an quickly covered for him by telling her customers that her son was moving things upstairs to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, Bong Seok confided in Hee-soo, feeling relieved that she didn't treat him as strange after learning his secret power. Hee-soo assured him that she understood there were people with unique abilities and had no issue with it. She promised to keep his secret safe. Mi-an, who overheard their conversation from below, was deeply moved by Hee-soo's sincerity and shed tears. Later, Hee-soo had to leave, and Mi-an asked Bong Seok to escort her to the bus stop. Bong Seok took off his weighted belt, allowing him to float, and caught up with Hee-soo. She was delighted to see Bong Seok flying to reach her and gladly accepted his offer to accompany her to the bus stop. After ensuring she boarded the bus, Bong Seok, feeling ecstatic, didn't realize he had started floating. At that moment, while Bong-seok was floating in the sky, he heard someone calling his name. But at the same time, Bong-seok suddenly woke up and realized that he had just been dreaming. Meanwhile, Ju-won arrived at the shopping center to deliver the fried chicken order. He coincidentally bumped into Frank, who had just left the scene of the Salon incident. Ju-won innocently asked about a cell phone repair shop on the 3rd floor, but Frank corrected him, saying they were on the 2nd floor. Before leaving, Ju-won gave Frank his business card and informed him about a loyalty reward for frequent purchases. Ju-won then proceeded to Yoon's cell phone repair shop to deliver the fried chicken. Despite Yoon's insults and threats, Ju-won remained patient and promised to return with an EDC machine for payment since Yoon refused other payment methods. The following day, Bong-seok tried to sneak out for school, but his mother, Mi-yeon, caught him and questioned why he was going to school on a Saturday. Bong-seok explained that he was a senior and needed to study on the weekends. Mi-yeon didn't suspect anything but noticed his changed hairstyle, thinking he might have other reasons. Upon arriving at school, Bong-seok and Hee-soo noticed large handprints near the basketball hoop, reaching an impressive height of 5 meters. They couldn't figure out who made these prints, and Hee-soo even teased Bong-seok about his new hairstyle not suiting him. While Hee-soo practiced handball and long jump, Bong-seok secretly watched her under the guise of studying. Later, Hee-soo shared a surprising revelation with Bong-seok, that she had been expelled from her previous school for fighting. Initially, Bong-seok thought it was a joke, but Hee-soo's serious demeanor made him realize she was telling the truth. She explained that despite fighting with 17 bullies, she remained unscathed while they got seriously injured. Her father had to spend a lot of money on medical bills and settlements, causing financial hardship. Bong-seok then promised to keep her secret, just as she had kept his. Hee-soo asked Bong-seok if he wanted to know more about why she got expelled, but he replied that he wanted to know about it. Understanding it might be a painful memory for her. This consideration touched Hee-soo, and she smiled at his kindness. She then shared that she and her father had moved frequently, always feeling like they were running from something. The story shifted to a moment in the past when Hee-soo and her father crossed paths with Bong-seok and his mother on a bridge, though none of them realized it. At that time, Ju-won worked hard as a daily laborer, taking on any physical job he could find to provide for Hee-soo. They were always on the move, never staying in one place for long, but Hee-soo was always his top priority. Eventually, Ju-won decided it was time to settle down so that Hee-soo could attend college. He landed a permanent job as a miner and bought a small house to give them stability. This allowed Hee-soo to focus on her final exams. During this time, Hee-soo, studying independently, noticed a group of girls bullying a transfer student named Haewon just because she came from a wealthy family. One of the bullies, Yura, forcibly took Haewon's earbuds, and Haewon, intimidated, reluctantly handed them over. Hee-soo realized her classmates were aware of the bullying but did nothing. That evening, Hee-soo thought about telling her father about the bullying but decided to endure it for one more semester to graduate soon. The following day, the bullies continued their harassment by demanding Haewon's sweater. Hee-soo promptly reported the bullying to her homeroom teacher. Unfortunately, when the teacher asked her classmates about it, they remained silent, including Haewon, who was too afraid of Yura and her friends. Despite this, teachers questioned suspected bullies, including Yura. Frustrated at being reported, Yura tore up her classmates' textbooks with a cutter. She even tried to attack Haewon with it, but a student named Lee intervened and stopped the bullying. Seeing this, Yura's boyfriend, Dak-ho, immediately attacked Lee, and none of their classmates came to Lee's aid. After school, Hee-soo asked Lee why he hadn't reported the beating by Dak-ho to their homeroom teacher. Lee explained that their classmates wouldn't support him, so he chose not to report it. He cautioned Hee-soo to blend in with their classmates, as helping Haewon might make her a target of bullying. The next day, Yura and her friends subjected Haewon to humiliation, dousing her with cold water in front of their classmates. Hee-soo tried to contain her anger, knowing she needed to endure it for her father's sake. However, she couldn't ignore the oppression any longer and decided to confront them. Hee-soo challenged Yura and her friends to a messy brawl in the schoolyard. During the fight, Hee-soo was brutally attacked, and Yura even slashed her throat with a cutter. Unexpectedly, Hee-soo's wound instantly healed, leaving Yura stunned and calling Hee-soo a monster. Dak-ho then joined the fight, but Hee-soo managed to fight back. As a result of the brawl, Hee-soo was expelled from school for severely beating up Yura and her friends. The students were afraid of her since she remained unharmed, so they avoided her. Hee-soo asked her father about her unique condition, and Ju-won revealed that she had inherited it from him. He also mentioned that she inherited her mother's sense of justice. Hee-soo feared her father would be disappointed, but he was actually happy to learn that she shared his unique condition. In the present, Ju-won arrived at the shopping center to collect payment from Yoon, carrying an EDC machine. Yoon had been disrespectful and discarded Ju-won's business card. In response, Ju-won scolded Yoon and added a high transaction fee to the payment. When Yoon noticed the gunshot wound on Ju-won's arm, he quickly changed his attitude and allowed the higher fee. As Ju-won was leaving the shopping center, he stumbled upon a gruesome murder scene at the Angel Hair Salon on the second floor. He realized it was no ordinary murder when he saw National Intelligence Service agents there. All the CCTV cameras in the building had been tampered with. Mi-yeon, distressed by the news of the murder, rushed to the shopping center to investigate further. She briefly spotted Ju-won, who was about to leave. Meanwhile, Hee-soo shared with Bong-seok that her mother had died in a car accident when she was 4 years old. She had no memory of her mother's face and wondered if her mother had cried in her final moments. Afterward, Hee-soo resumed her training and made significant progress in high jump. She thanked Bong-seok for spending the day training with her, even though it was his day off. On another note, Eun-ju informed Young-jun that they had closed the Nanju case, labeling it as a robbery-turned-murder to avoid raising suspicion among the public. They were puzzled about why the killer targeted retired agents, but Young-jun suggested that the killer was working for a specific group. Young-jun also mentioned that the murdered agents had been involved in secret missions with the CIA. He suspected that the CIA might be behind the killings, viewing the retired agents as a significant threat. Eun-ju asked if they should contact the US Embassy, but Young-jun explained that they needed more evidence before making such a move. Meanwhile, Frank attended Naju's funeral in an attempt to gather information about her children. He learned from her adoptive son that Naju had been a loving mother who treated her adoptive children as her own, without any distinctions. Unbeknownst to them, a young woman at the funeral eavesdropped on their conversation. The scene then shifted to the past, showing La-yog approaching Yura to hear her testimony about Hee-soo's regenerative abilities. In the present, La-yog visited Young-jun to report on the progress of the National Talent Development Project, which he had been overseeing for a decade. He intended to inform his superiors about Hee-soo, but was cautioned by Young-jun to protect the NTDP files, which held valuable information about their secret project and could be dangerous if stolen by their enemies. At school, Bong-seok told Hee-soo that her mother must have been happy in her final moments when she discovered that Hee-soo had regenerative abilities just like her father. Hee-soo suddenly had a vivid memory of the car accident that took her mother's life. She recalled her mother's smiling face just before the flames consumed her. Meanwhile, as Frank was leaving the funeral home, he unknowingly crossed paths with Gaedao, who was attending Bong Pyong's funeral. Gaedao held the same battery that Bong Pyong had used before being killed by Frank. In a twist of fate, Gaedao awakened the power he had inherited from his father, Bong Pyong. The next day, Hee-soo was surprised to see Haewon at her school. Haewon had intentionally transferred to Chongwon High School to be with Hee-soo, and even requested to be placed in the same class with her. The story then flashed back to 1995 when a young Gaedao amazed his teacher and classmates by generating static electricity by rubbing plastic on his hair. Several years later, Gaedao attended Chongwon High School and received physical training from Il-run, who was a first-year teacher at the time. Gaedao's physical fitness test results weren't great, so Il-run suggested he consider majoring in broadcasting and entertainment in college to secure a job. After high school, Gaedao took a chance and auditioned to become the Bon Ga-mund. Despite lacking acting or martial arts skills, he wowed the judges by showcasing his electric power, earning him the role of the Bon Ga Mund, a superhero with lightning abilities and the ability to fly into space. This made Gato a beloved figure among kids, including Bong Seok, who admired heroes like the Bon Ga Mund seen on TV. Gato thoroughly enjoyed his job as the Bon Ga Mund, earning a decent salary while indulging in his love for performing. To control his electric power, he always wore rubber gloves as insulators. But one day, just before a performance, his gloves unexpectedly tore, and he didn't have time to replace them. On stage, Gato began his Bon Ga Mund act, but without his gloves, he lost control of his static electricity. This caused an accidental electrical short circuit that frightened the children in the audience, making them cry. Gato felt devastated because he not only scared the kids, but also faced a scolding from the director and producer, who decided to fire him after the incident. After losing his job, Gato returned home to a heartbreaking discovery that his mother had passed away. Bong Pyong attended his wife's funeral and expressed his regrets to Gato for not being a good father over the years. However, Gato reassured him, saying there was no need for apologies. He understood that his father had silently cared for him and had always sent money to support him and his mother. Bong Pyong then shared that he had retired from his government job and now managed a second-hand bookshop. Before leaving, he invited Gato to visit the bookshop whenever he had free time. Even though Gato tried to appear strong, he was deeply affected by his mother's death and felt lost. In the days that followed, Gato attempted to apply for jobs at various companies, but he always failed. Gato then gave his father a battery from his smart door key, explaining that it held memories of his mother's final moments. Gato expressed his frustration about not finding a job and feeling useless. He believed that his power often brought trouble, and he felt like he was a burden to others. He thought there was no one left in the world who cared for him after his mother's passing. However, Bong Pyong assured him that he still cared and showed Gato a photo from their time together at his high school graduation, reminding him of the love and connection they shared. Shortly after that, Gato found himself having a drink by the roadside when he noticed a bus that had broken down due to a malfunctioning generator. The bus driver, Dong Yang, was clearly frustrated as the headquarters had refused to send assistance to recharge the battery. Gato then posed as the Bon Ga Mund and approached the stranded bus. Using his electric powers, he managed to restart the generator, saving the day and getting the bus back on the road. In gratitude for his help, Dong Yang offered Gato a job as a bus driver. The next day marked Gato's first day on the job, and he continued to wear his rubber gloves as a precaution. Over the years, he grew to enjoy his work, but it was the friendly greetings from one passenger, Bong Seok, that always stood out. Bong Seok's warm and eager demeanor made a lasting impression on Gato. Not too long ago, Gato received the news that his father had passed away. Dong Yang suggested he take a few days off to focus on arranging his father's funeral. At the funeral home, Gato used his powers to investigate his father's death and discovered that Frank was responsible for the murder. The following day, Bong Seok was annoyed when Mi-Yen instructed him to head home after self-study, as he had planned to accompany Hee-Soo during her practice. Just as they were about to discuss Bong Seok's overprotective mother, they were surprised by Haewon, who asked if she could join them for lunch. Without hesitation, Hee-Soo and Bong Seok welcomed Haewon to join them. Around the same time, Hun Beol joined the group, explaining that she often filmed their classmates, which led to her being isolated by them. She was thrilled to find out that Bong Seok was her only subscriber and happily shared her side dish with him. As they chatted, they noticed Ki-Soo bullying Kung-hoon by spilling food onto his plate. Ki-Soo even dared Kung-hoon to hit him, just like he had done a few days ago. However, Kung-hoon chose to control his anger to avoid drawing more attention to the situation. Ki-Soo, frustrated by Kung-hoon's lack of response, whispered a threat about revealing Kung-hoon's secret to the public. Meanwhile, Bong Seok, who was sitting a bit far away, overheard their conversation. Before leaving, Ki-Soo took Kung-hoon's glasses and put them in his food before spitting on them. In response, Kung-hoon calmly placed his plate on a shelf and left the area. While this was happening, Hee-soo and Bong Seok took Kung-hoon's glasses and cleaned them up. In the meantime, a teacher named Song-up approached Il-run and shared the cafeteria incident involving Ki-soo and Kung-hoon. Song-up also mentioned that Ki-soo had been acting strangely and frequently provoking Kung-hoon. Il-run, however, suspected Song-up of sneaking into his office and asked him to leave. Once Song-up was gone, Il-run reviewed the evaluations of Kung-hoon and Ki-soo. According to the evaluations, Kung-hoon had received an S+ rating, signifying that he was qualified, while Ki-soo had received a C rating, indicating that he was unqualified. In class, Il-run asked Ki-soo to meet him in his office, but Ki-soo chose to flee instead. Shortly after, Hee-soo approached Kung-hoon, who was calming down by listening to music, and returned his glasses. She praised Kung-hoon for maintaining his composure when he was humiliated in front of everyone. Kung-hoon, in response, expressed confidence that Ki-soo could never defeat him. Hee-soo then asked Kung-hoon to turn on the fan and revealed that it was Bong Seok had cleaned his glasses. Before parting ways, Kung-hoon thanked Hee-soo and mentioned that his father also had a store. Meanwhile, Gae-dao decided to return to work shortly after his father's funeral, despite Dong-yong's advice to take a longer break. On the other hand, Frank, who was still awaiting further orders, reminisced about his childhood. While memories of his mother flickered through his mind, Frank didn't appear to hold them dearly. In a different place, Eun-ju had finally managed to uncover information about Frank's past. It turned out that Frank had been forcibly taken to the United States as a child. His mother was a Korean woman, and his father was an American soldier stationed in South Korea. Eun-ju explained that Frank had been adopted by a CIA agent, and all records of his previous life had been erased. Upon discovering this, Yang-jun instructed Eun-ju to arrange a meeting with the U.S. consular. That evening, Bong Seok put together a playlist of songs on his phone to uplift Hee-soo during her practice. When Hee-soo found out, she thanked Bong Seok, and in a moment of closeness, their eyes met, making Bong Seok feel like he was floating. Realizing this, Hee-soo quickly helped Bong Seok put on his backpack and held onto him to keep him from floating away. Bong Seok left his phone in the school gym for Hee-soo to keep listening to the songs while he returned to his classroom for self-study. However, Hee-soo left the phone on, and its battery eventually ran out. When Bong Seok went back to the gym to get his phone, he looked worried, fearing his mother's scolding. He decided to hurry home to avoid causing any concern to his mother. Meanwhile, Frank received a message instructing him to eliminate target number 17, who happened to be Mi-yeon. As Bong Seok was getting on the bus, he appeared happy to see Gae-dao back at work, expressing his concern for his absence. Gae-dao was deeply moved to realize that someone still cared about him. At the same time, Kung-hoon, returning home, met his father, who effortlessly crushed used cans with his super strength. Jae-mund was happy to see Kung-hoon back early, and to his surprise, Kung-hoon suddenly apologized, which touched Jae-mund deeply. Hee-soo, about to meet her father, was taken aback by an angry Yoon emerging from Ju-won's restaurant. Ju-won then revealed that he had bought a phone for Hee-soo to make communication easier and emphasized the importance of answering it promptly and keeping him informed. Hee-soo was delighted and thanked her father for his attentiveness. On the other hand, Mark, the counselor from the U.S. Embassy, finally arrived at Yang-jun's office and requested special treatment. However, Yang-jun declined to treat Mark differently after learning that he was a CIA agent posing as a counselor. Frank finally reached Mi-yeon's place and pretended to be a customer, placing an order for food. Mi-yeon, realizing that Frank was no ordinary customer, quickly messaged Bong Seok, instructing him not to come home. Meanwhile, Yang-jun warned Mark to halt Frank's assassination mission. He made it clear that if the United States insisted on proceeding, he would escalate the situation into a diplomatic crisis that would have severe consequences for their country. Since Mark lacked the authority to stop the mission, he informed Yang-jun that he would postpone it. However, Yang-jun threatened Mark by hinting at involving the Chinese State Security Department, or the MSS. While Mi-yeon served food to Frank, Bong Seok arrived. Mi-yeon treated Bong Seok like any other customer to conceal the fact that he was her son from Frank. She then invited Bong Seok to sit down while she prepared a meal for him. In the meantime, Frank engaged Bong Seok in conversation, and Bong Seok accidentally revealed that he lived in the same house. Upon hearing this, Mi-an discreetly retrieved a pistol and concealed it behind her back. Simultaneously, Mark messaged Frank to postpone the mission, prompting Frank to leave the premises. Although Mark had postponed the assassination mission, Young-jun insisted on canceling it entirely. Mark countered by accusing the NIS of developing a project for the next generation, to which Young-jun responded that the CIA had done the same because Frank had been their experimental subject. After Frank left, Mi-an scolded Bong Seok for not responding to her message. Bong Seok tried to explain that his phone had run out of battery, but Mi-an refused to listen to his explanation. He then asked his mother about Frank and requested that she at least explain what had happened, but Mi-an chose to remain silent. The scene then shifted to the past, showing young Frank watching his mother perform in a nightclub. Frank enjoyed the show, unaware that an American soldier was standing behind him, ready to arrest him and take him away. Frank desperately sought help from his mother, but she ignored him, seemingly allowing the soldier to take him. Soon after, Frank was taken to a cornfield, where he was seen trying to kill another boy. He succeeded in killing the boy and 4 others, but his fight for survival wasn't over. Moments later, soldiers began shooting at him relentlessly, forcing Frank to dodge the bullets desperately. Frank and 6 other boys managed to reach the entrance of a bunker, and they were declared to have passed the test. In the present, Frank sent a message to Mark to check on the progress of their mission. Instead of following Young-jun's orders to cancel the mission, Mark decided to proceed with the assassination mission and told Frank to target number 8, who turned out to be Ju-won. Unexpectedly, Frank almost had a collision with Gato, who was driving a bus and got distracted for a moment. Gato quickly recognized Frank as the one who had killed his father and decided to take revenge right there. He asked all the passengers to exit the bus and then pursued Frank, who was driving a truck at high speed. They had a tense chase on the highway, with Frank evading Gato by driving against traffic and heading into a grassy field to hide. However, Gato managed to figure out Frank's escape route and followed him into the field. As Gato searched the field for Frank, he got a surprise when Frank rammed into his bus from the side because he had anticipated Gato's arrival. When he saw Frank standing in front of him, Gato grabbed the battery that Bong Peon had used in his last moments and got off the bus to confront Frank. Even though Gato inherited electrical powers from his father, he couldn't match Frank's strength, and Frank easily knocked him down several times. While he kept attacking Frank, Gato asked him why he had killed his father. On the other hand, Frank finally realized that Gato was Bong Peon's son because of the similar powers he displayed. Not wanting to waste any more time, Frank continued to attack Gato until he fell unconscious, and then rushed to Ju-won's fried chicken restaurant to carry out the assassination. When Frank arrived at the restaurant, he discovered it was closed because Ju-won had gone out for a delivery. Instead of waiting, Frank decided to track down Ju-won at the delivery location. He caught up with him and violently attacked Ju-won, repeatedly crushing his body. Frank had received information that Ju-won could regenerate quickly, so he made sure Ju-won was dead and then sent a message to Mark, informing him of the kill. However, Ju-won was not dead. Ju-won had secretly hidden under a truck to spy on Frank and learn his whereabouts. Emerging from his hiding place, Ju-won launched a relentless attack on Frank upon discovering that he was responsible for the deaths of other retired agents. Although Frank also possessed regenerative abilities, Ju-won didn't hesitate to fight him, determined to take him down. Their battle was fierce, with both displaying incredible strength and rapid healing powers. It became increasingly difficult to predict the outcome. Frank, though, realized that Ju-won had a unique ability to heal not only wounds, but also broken bones quickly, a skill Frank didn't possess. In the end, Ju-won managed to defeat Frank, and he demanded to know who had sent Frank to kill him. However, Frank was more interested in Ju-won's child, which angered Ju-won and drove him to beat Frank to death. Afterward, Ju-won sent a message to Mark, declaring his intention to kill him, and then proceeded to destroy the files, the truck, and Frank's body by setting them on fire. The next day, Mi-yeon gave Bong Seok a portable charger and told him to head straight home after school to study on his own. Bong Seok felt a little frustrated by this, but he didn't want to disobey his mother's instructions, even though he wished he could go with Hee-soo to her practice after school. In class, Il-run stressed the importance of diligent studying because final exams were coming up. After he left the classroom, Kung-hoon scolded Bong Seok and Hee-soo for not handing over their phones. All students were supposed to put their phones in one place during class to help them concentrate on their studies. Meanwhile, Hee-soo realized that Kung-hoon was interested in Hee-soo and once again tried to provoke Kung-hoon to use his powers in front of others. Hee-soo also threatened to expose the truth about Il-run and his group, who had intentionally injured his leg to remove him from the program. Hee-soo invited Bong Seok to have lunch at a supermarket after school, but Bong Seok explained that his mother had told him to go home and study independently. Over the following days, Hee-soo continued her training without Bong Seok's company, while Kung-hoon chose to study late into the night in the school's study room. As usual, Jae-mund waited for Kung-hoon in front of the house to welcome him home. Over time, Ju-won's fried chicken restaurant started to attract more and more customers, and Mi-yeon became more diligent in maintaining her weapons, just to be cautious. A few days before the exams, Hee-soo sent a message of encouragement to Bong Seok, who was studying at home. Surprisingly, Bong Seok decided to fly over to meet Hee-soo, who had come to that place on purpose. Hee-soo thought Bong Seok was avoiding her because he wanted to focus on studying for the final exams, but he assured her that it wasn't the case. Bong Seok explained that his mother had told him to go straight home and study there, and he couldn't disobey his mother's orders. Hearing this, Hee-soo placed a large rock in Bong Seok's lap to prevent him from floating away, while she shared how much she missed him. Bong Seok instantly felt happy and wanted to express how much he missed Hee-soo too, but then it started to snow, and Hee-soo got distracted by the falling snowflakes. A few days later, the students took their final school exams and university entrance exams, even though the semester wasn't officially over yet. Meanwhile, someone sneaked into the school gym to tamper with the bolts holding the basketball hoop, hinting at a sinister plan. The next day, Il-run asked the students to exercise in the gym, while Hee-soo continued her training since she hadn't completed her physical test yet. Kung-hoon invited Bong Seok to play badminton, even though Bong Seok had initially planned to accompany Hee-soo during her training. Hyun-bio started recording their activities with her camera and noticed that Hee-soo was observing them from the second floor. Hee-soo, accompanied by Haewon, successfully completed a high jump exercise, reaching the target. Hee-soo was delighted with her achievement, so she waved at Bong Seok, but Kung-hoon seemed upset and jealous because Bong Seok was getting close to Hee-soo. In his frustration, Kung-hoon threw the shuttlecock toward Bong Seok, which instantly tore Bong Seok's racket and damaged the shuttlecock. Meanwhile, due to the force of Hee-soo's hits, the bolts on the backboard started to come loose one by one. Haewon noticed this and tried to warn Hee-soo, but it was too late as the backboard detached from the support pole and was about to fall on Hee-soo below. Bong Seok and Kung-hoon realized the danger Hee-soo was in and rushed to save her. Kung-hoon, known for his incredible speed, reached Hee-soo first, while Bong Seok, who could also run very fast, followed closely. The onlookers watched as Kung-hoon sprinted to rescue Hee-soo, and Hee-soo looked pleased because his plan had worked. Hyun-bio, who had recorded the incident, uploaded the video to her YouTube channel, and it quickly went viral on the internet. Eun-ju told Yeonjun that she had tried her best to remove all the videos and prevent the press from reporting on Kung-hoon's superpowers. However, the video still spread on various social media platforms, angering Yeonjun further as their secret project had been exposed. Ju-won and Mi-yeon also watched the video and became increasingly worried that their children's superpowers would be revealed to the public. Mi-yeon rushed to her son's room, but found that Bong Seok had left without his weighted belt. Meanwhile, Bong Seok, still upset over his inability to save Hee-soo, attempted to control his powers to stabilize his flight and floating abilities, but he struggled repeatedly. Bong Seok refused to give up and kept trying until he successfully flew and floated for a while without falling. But then his mother, Mian, suddenly appeared and Bong Sik fell in shock. Mian asked him why he wasn't wearing his weights, and Bong Seok explained that he didn't want to wear them anymore. He blamed his mother for always stopping him from practicing his powers, suggesting that if she had let him, he might have been able to save Hee-soo before Kung Hoon did. Mian responded by saying she held him back because she didn't want him to meet the same fate as his father. This mention of his father surprised Bong Seok since Mian had always kept his father a secret. Bong Seok had chosen not to share his dream, which was a memory of his father hugging him in the sky. Meanwhile, in North Korea, a military officer named Dak Hyun received orders to go to South Korea after watching a video of Kung Hoon saving Hee-soo using his superpowers. The story then shifted to 1987, where an elite NIS agent named Do-sik tried to save passengers on an airplane after receiving information about a terrorist threat. Do-sik, who could fly, attempted to warn the pilots to land the plane, but they ignored him and the plane exploded in the sky. Several years later, in 1994, Minyan, who was still working for the NIS, was tasked by Yongjun to get close to Do-sik and gather information about him, including his beliefs and mental state, because the NIS had an important mission for him. Mian questioned why she was chosen, as she wasn't a field agent, but Yongjun told her to use her beauty to charm Do-sik, as she was considered the most beautiful woman in the office. Yongjun informed Mian that he had assigned Do-sik and his partner, Ju-won, to visit the office once a week. He instructed Mian to approach Do-sik naturally so that he wouldn't suspect her mission. Mian, who had never dated before, felt a bit nervous, especially because Do-sik was a very handsome man. Initially, Do-sik didn't pay much attention to Mian, who always carried many books and documents when they passed each other in the corridor or elevator. But over time, he became interested in her and secretly looked for her whenever he came to the headquarters. Later, Yongjun ordered them to report to the headquarters twice a week and asked Do-sik to leave so he could discuss something with Ju-won. After practicing shooting, Do-sik planned to buy coffee, making sure he had enough small change. Mi-hyun anticipated this and intentionally waited for him by the coffee machine to strike up a conversation. They introduced themselves, and Mi-hyun quickly realized that Do-sik was interested in her because he lied about not having small change to borrow money from her for coffee. The story then shifted to the past, specifically in 1992, when the NIS conducted the Seagull operation in a hotel in China to uncover the identities of double agents. Mi-hyun posed as a singer to entertain the guests. However, several people collapsed and died after drinking poisoned tea served by waiters. NIS agent Sung-gu aimed a gun at his partner Park, who turned out to be a double agent. Park had informed the other double agents about the poisoned tea, so only those who didn't drink it survived. The surviving double agents tried to escape, but Sung-gu killed them one by one. Sung-gu, realizing that some of the people were pretending to be dead, ordered Mi-hyun and the other agents to eliminate anyone showing signs of movement while filling the room with tear gas. As they walked through the room searching for surviving double agents, Mi-hyun hesitated to kill them because she believed not everyone in the hotel was a double agent. Sung-gu instructed Mi-hyun to use tear gas, but she accidentally threw a flashbang grenade, stunning Sung-gu and the others. Quickly, Mi-hyun shot the door lock to create an escape route for the surviving agents, allowing them to flee before Sung-gu and the others could recover and launch an attack. Sung-gu, frustrated that many double agents escaped, scolded Mi-hyun for not handling her duties properly. Meanwhile, Eun-ju, who was Mi-hyun's superior at the time, had some concerns about Mi-hyun's mission due to her past mistakes. However, Yongjun was confident that Mi-hyun could successfully complete her task. Eun-ju decided to instruct Mi-hyun to work overtime, increasing the frequency of her meetings with Do-sik. While working late, Mi-hyun received a notification that Do-sik and Ju-won had arrived at the headquarters. She quickly grabbed the books she always carried to avoid raising suspicion when approaching Do-sik. On the other hand, Do-sik was delighted to see Mi-hyun's car in the parking area and began searching for her, hoping for a chance to chat. Mi-yeon finally appeared as they were about to take the elevator, and when they reached the 5th floor, Do-sik offered to carry her books since Mi-yeon looked exhausted. Do-sik invited Mi-yeon to have coffee with him, and they had a pleasant conversation. The next day, Ju-won scolded Mi-yeon for speaking informally to him, despite the age gap. Instead of apologizing, Mi-yeon revealed that she was a graduate of the 54th class, making her more senior than Ju-won, who graduated from the 57th class. Ju-won quickly became polite to Mi-yeon and allowed Do-sik to accompany her while he handled administrative tasks from Young-jun. During their coffee time, Do-sik admitted that he already knew about her mission to get close to him. Mi-yeon apologized, but Do-sik didn't mind because he understood it was just part of her assignment from Young-jun. Do-sik found Mi-yeon similar to him and invited her to dinner at a donkasu restaurant. He was impressed when Mi-yeon accurately described the ingredients of donkasu sauce, especially after she mentioned her superhuman 5 senses. When Do-sik asked Mi-yeon what she would do if her mission failed, she seemed unconcerned, as she had experienced failure before. Do-sik advised her to continue her mission as if he didn't know about it. The next day, Do-sik confessed to Mi-yeon that he allowed her to get close to him because he was genuinely interested in her and had fallen in love with her. Mi-yeon was surprised, and their interaction became awkward. On the other hand, Eun-ju asked Young-jun why they were investigating Do-sik in such detail, considering he had mostly successful missions with only one failure. Young-jun then revealed that Do-sik was known as the Eagle in the Seagull operation, tasked with eliminating double agents who escaped their trap. When Mi-yeon allowed the double agents to escape, Sung-gu ordered Do-sik to kill them, but he disobeyed. After the mission failure, NIS suspected Do-sik of being a double agent, but needed confirmation because he was a highly skilled agent. In the following days, Mi-yeon and Do-sik grew closer and felt less awkward discussing their personal lives. Mi-yeon mentioned her love for the color purple and how her curtains at home were also purple. Shortly after, Young-jun called Mi-yeon into his office. When she arrived, she accidentally noticed some cassette tapes that Young-jun's secretary had dropped. Young-jun asked about the mission's progress but realized Mi-yeon was unaware of Do-sik's secret, despite their personal conversations. Young-jun emphasized the importance of getting closer to Do-sik, warning Mi-yeon that failure could lead to serious consequences. As she left his office, Mi-yeon was confronted by Eun-ju, who scolded her in front of her colleagues for reporting more to Young-jun than her direct supervisor. That night, Do-sik surprised Mi-yeon by appearing at her window, revealing his ability to fly. He had brought donkasu for her dinner and handed it over awkwardly. Mi-yeon happily accepted the meal and thanked Do-sik for both the food and for sharing his secret with her. The next day, Ju-won, during shooting practice, noticed that Do-sik aimed his shots at a specific area to disable his targets without killing them, which impressed Ju-won. Later, Do-sik visited Mi-yeon at work, and she wasn't surprised by his arrival because she could hear the gunfire from the underground shooting range, despite her office being on the 5th floor. Do-sik was amazed by her hearing ability. Mi-yeon then opened up to Do-sik, admitting that she had been nervous when they first spoke because she thought of him as a serious elite agent. However, she found him friendly and even humorous, making her quickly feel at ease. Do-sik explained that his job kept him distant from others, making him somewhat awkward in social situations. Still, he genuinely wanted to impress Mi-yeon and make a good impression. Mi-yeon then playfully revealed her secret to Do-sik by tapping the table to the rhythm of his fast-beating heart, remarking that he might end up in trouble if his heart raced like that. In a surprising turn, Do-sik embraced Mi-yeon and kissed her passionately, causing them both to float due to their excitement. It became clear that they shared romantic feelings for each other. A few days later, Young-jun appeared upset while reading a newspaper headline about North Korea's leader, Kim Il-sung, expressing his desire for an inter-Korea summit. He called Mi-yeon and asked about the mission's progress. Mi-yeon chose not to disclose her knowledge of Do-sik's secret, but Young-jun seemed to sense something was off. He abruptly ended her mission and told her to leave, leaving Mi-yeon confused. As she left Young-jun's office, Mi-yeon coincidentally met Eun-ju, which raised her suspicions about her. Eun-ju had been delivering cassette tapes to Yang-jun, but was surprised when he said he no longer needed them. Yang-jun then revealed his true plan to Eun-ju, uniting Do-sik and Mi-yeon, because he had known about Do-sik's love for Mi-yeon since the Seagull operation. During this time, Do-sik realized that Mi-yeon had helped the double agents escape. Mi-yeon willingly risked being accused as a double agent because she was a compassionate person, much like Do-sik himself. Unknown to them, Yang-jun had planned for Do-sik and Mi-yeon to fall in love, and that's why he had assigned the mission to Mi-yeon. Yang-jun informed Eun-ju that his plan had worked because Mi-yeon had indeed fallen in love with Do-sik. He had discovered this because Mi-yeon had lied to him. Unfortunately, Yang-jun's secretary overheard their conversation and called Mi-yeon to reveal that her lie had been exposed. Panicked, Mi-yeon rushed to Eun-ju's room and, using her heightened senses, detected hidden cameras and recording devices, even in vending machines. These had been secretly placed by Yang-jun to spy on her and Do-sik. Confronting Yang-jun about this invasion of privacy, he justified it as part of his job, similar to Mi-yeon's role. He remained tight-lipped about the details of his real plan and mentioned Mi-yeon's terminally ill father, who was receiving intensive treatment in the hospital. Meanwhile, Yang-jun assigned a secret mission to Do-sik, preventing him from bidding farewell to Mi-yeon. He was only allowed to watch her from a distance one day before his departure. In the following days, Mi-yeon began to worry about Do-sik's sudden departure, and they received shocking news of North Korea's supreme leader, Kim Il-sung, passing away from a heart attack just 15 days before the Inter-Korea summit. Meanwhile, Yang-jun was deeply distressed, not knowing where Do-sik was. Yang-jun gathered all the top officials at the NIS and ordered them to mobilize all agents to find Do-sik. Do-sik became the most wanted fugitive by the National Intelligence Agency. Mi-yeon continued her usual activities and visited her father in the hospital. However, she realized that Yang-jun had assigned agents to spy on her, believing that Do-sik would return to see her. One rainy night, Do-sik surprised Mi-yeon by flipping outside her apartment window. He explained that he could find her place because she had once mentioned that her curtains were purple. Overjoyed and filled with longing, Mi-yeon hugged and kissed Do-sik intensely, knowing that he genuinely loved her and was willing to risk his life to see her again, even though the SWAT team and NIS agents had surrounded her apartment. The scene then shifted to the year 1990, showing Ju-won arriving at a nightclub in Ulsan. At that time, Ju-won was a gangster, and his boss, Kwon-jin, ordered him to confront the Ulsan gang led by Jae-sung. Using his incredible strength, Ju-won easily defeated all of Jae-sung's henchmen and compelled Jae-sung to sign a business transfer contract for the nightclub. Ju-won had a clear intention of intimidating Jae-sung, making sure he wouldn't dare to defy him. Instead of being impressed, Jae-sung insulted Ju-won, calling him a monster. He had seen Ju-won injure himself and quickly heal, which added to his fear. After Jae-sung reluctantly signed the contract, Ju-won handed it to Kwon-jin and excused himself to clean up in the restroom. One of the gangsters, Min-ki, helped Ju-won remove a knife that was lodged in his back. Min-ki, considering himself Ju-won's right-hand man, praised his monstrous strength, which made their enemies tremble and allowed their gang, the Pohang gang, to expand into Ulsan. Even though Kwon-jin was the gang's leader, Ju-won earned immense respect from the other members due to his terrifying strength. However, Ju-won soon discovered that Kwon-jin showed great deference to Jae-sung, as if Jae-sung were his superior. This angered Ju-won, thinking that Jae-sung had somehow threatened Kwon-jin. He contemplated attacking Jae-sung, but Kwon-jin defended Jae-sung and ordered Ju-won to leave the room. Kwon-jin later explained that Jae-sung had proposed a deal to collaborate with the Pohang gang, and being driven by financial interests, Kwon-jin had been swayed by the agreement. This angered Ju-won even more because Kwon-jin seemed to prioritize money over the sacrifices Ju-won had made to protect their fellow gang members. Meanwhile, Ju-won often took advantage of his robust body and rapid healing ability to stage accidents, deliberately crashing into cars and demanding compensation from the drivers. If Ju-won spotting the drivers who were under the influence of alcohol, he didn't hesitate to demand 300,000 won from them, along with a threat to report them to the police if they refused to pay. Despite his powerful physique, Ju-won had a tendency to get lost easily. On his way back to the motel one day, he noticed a woman named Ji-hee riding a motorcycle, and he seemed intrigued by her. During his downtime from working for Kwon-jin, Ju-won would spend more time at the motel, engrossed in self-defense novels and watching wrestling shows on TV. Despite being a gangster, Ju-won had a passion for reading and had a penchant for cleanliness and tidiness. On one occasion, when Ju-won visited the nightclub, he discovered that Min-ki had been promoted to the role of administrative manager. However, Min-ki appeared busy, so Ju-won initially intended to invite him to dinner. But seeing Min-ki preoccupied, he decided to return to the motel and settle for instant noodles instead. After finishing his meal and leaving the dirty bowl outside his door, Ju-won overheard a heated argument between Ji-hee and a guest named Hyeol. Hyeol had insulted Ji-hee by calling her a prostitute, to which Ji-hee responded by defending herself, even comparing Hyeol unfavorably to a dog due to his rude behavior. When the motel owner demanded accommodation fees from Ju-won, he resorted to his act of pretending to be an accident victim to collect some extra cash. After securing enough money, he returned to the hotel and coincidentally bumped into Ji-hee in the hallway. Ju-won immediately offered to help her organize her belongings, which left Ji-hee impressed because most men equated her with prostitutes, so they usually treated her roughly. Ji-hee was curious about Ju-won's age because of his bearded appearance, but Ju-won chose not to share that information and left abruptly. The next day, Ju-won visited Kwon-jin, resulting in a heated argument as he refused to join the Ulsan gang. Ju-won emphasized that it was the Ulsan gang that had initiated the attack, leading to injuries among their own members. However, Kwon-jin appeared indifferent to these concerns, even openly referring to Ju-won as a monster, despite the sacrifices Ju-won had made to protect their group. Due to his refusal to join the Ulsan gang, Ju-won left the nightclub. Later that night, he attempted his usual act of pretending to be a victim of an accident, but this time, the driver chose to abandon him instead of offering help. As Ju-won tried to chase after the car while feigning injury, he coincidentally ran into Ji-hee. Failing to catch up with the car, Ju-won asked Ji-hee for directions back to the motel, but her explanations left him confused, leading to him getting lost and even further from his destination. Despite hours of wandering, Ju-won couldn't find his way back, resulting in frustration and tears in front of Ji-hee. Seeing Ju-won's distress, Ji-hee took pity on him and offered to guide him back to the motel. Sometime later, Min-ki invited Ju-won and Kwon-jin to dinner, but it turned out to be a plot as Min-ki had conspired with Jae-sung to drug them. Ju-won eventually woke up and realized that he and Kwon-jin were tied up in a car, with Jae-sung planning to drown them. Ju-won tried to persuade Jae-sung to release Kwon-jin, still considering him as his boss. Unexpectedly, Jae-sung claimed that Kwon-jin had been deceiving Ju-won all along. According to Jae-sung, Kwon-jin was the one who initiated the conflict with the Ulsan gang and had used Ju-won as a human shield deliberately. Jae-sung also revealed that Min-ki had betrayed them, and it was Min-ki who had suggested the plan to drown Ju-won. This revelation left Ju-won both furious and deeply disappointed because he had never suspected that Kwon-jin and Min-ki would betray him in such a way. After laying bare all these shocking truths, Jae-sung ordered his henchmen to sink the car with Ju-won to the bottom of the sea. Ju-won fought relentlessly for his survival and eventually managed to free himself and swim to the surface. Once he reached the shore, Ju-won wasted no time and headed straight to the nightclub, determined to exact revenge on Jae-sung and his accomplices. He made sure to injure Min-ki's face as a warning to him and the other gangsters not to underestimate him any longer. Sometime later, upon hearing about Ju-won being labeled as a monster, Young-jun paid a visit to Min-ki. He issued a direct order to capture Ju-won, promising Min-ki that he could continue his illegal activities if he successfully brought Ju-won to him. Meanwhile, Ju-won's interest in Ji-hee grew, and he planned to order coffee at the coffee shop where she worked. Before doing so, he took the initiative to clean his room and shave off his beard in an attempt to impress Ji-hee. However, the workers who initially served him was not Ji-hee. Nevertheless, Ju-won persevered and continued ordering coffee from the shop until he finally encountered Ji-hee. He expressed his gratitude to her for escorting him back to the motel, leading to a conversation in which Ju-won shared various details about himself, including his fondness for martial arts novels, wrestling shows, and his struggle with claustrophobia or fear of confined spaces. After watching the wrestling show together, Ju-won shared that his favorite wrestler was Hulk Hogan with Ji-hee. Ji-hee liked Hulk because he appeared monstrous but was actually a good guy. When it was time for Ji-hee to leave, Ju-won surprised her by giving her some money and expressing his desire to buy a ticket. Ji-hee assumed he wanted to extend their time for intimacy, but Ju-won simply wanted to continue talking. However, Ji-hee thought he was joking and suggested he visit the coffee shop instead. Ju-won admitted he wasn't great with directions, which is why he kept ordering coffee to see Ji-hee. Despite her shock, Ji-hee left Ju-won. When she returned to the coffee shop, she learned from the owner, Maran, that all the other coffee ladies who went to Ju-won's room were sent home, except for Ji-hee, who had a lengthy conversation with him. In the following days, Ju-won frequently ordered coffee, and Ji-hee was consistently sent to serve him. Unlike other guests, Ju-won treated Ji-hee with kindness, being polite and attentive. One day, when Ju-won arrived at the motel, he heard Ji-hee screaming as she resisted Gyul and his friends, who were attempting to harass her. Instead of using the door, Ju-won showcased his immense strength by breaking through the room's wall intentionally. He then defeated Gyul and his friends and locked them in a warehouse. However, Gyul managed to escape and reported the incident to the entire gang in the city. Shortly after, Min-ki sent gangsters to the motel to capture Ju-won on Yongjun's orders. Yet Ju-won easily defeated them and fled. Meanwhile, Ji-hee, aware of the attack on Ju-won, hurried to find his whereabouts. As the gangsters attempted to overpower Ju-won by ramming him from two sides and repeatedly stabbing him, Yongjun ordered someone to verify whether Ju-won was genuinely a monster or just an ordinary person with slightly extraordinary physical abilities. In his attempt to escape from the gangsters, Ju-won eventually encountered Ji-hee, who helped him get away from the dangerous situation. However, their relief was short-lived as they got hit by a car. Despite being angry, Ju-won did his best to protect the unconscious Ji-hee after the accident. He confronted the gangsters who were trying to harm them, but they managed to overpower Ju-won and render him immobile. As things looked dire, Min-ki approached Ju-won with a lethal weapon typically used by whalers, intending to end his life. Unexpectedly, Do-sik arrived from the sky and shot Min-ki, saving Ju-won's life in the process. 6 months later, Yongjun officially recruited Ju-won as an NIS secret agent, giving him the codename Goryangpo. Not only that, Ju-won was also assigned to be partners with Munson, who was none other than Do-sik. Shortly after, Ju-won bumped into Ji-hee at the coffee shop, and they engaged in a pleasant conversation.